Hey there randos, it's the Random Dave here. So my intention was to make a video on changing the boot on a front left CV joint, and what this video turned out to be was a failure. So today is day 2. I put the vehicle all back together again and ended up having to buy a new axle. So yeah, this is going to be a video on a failure. It's going to start out with all my footage of showing how to do that boot up to a point, and then it's going to turn into changing the front driver's side axle on a 2009 Toyota Camry. So stay tuned for that. It wasn't what I'd call a catastrophic failure. It's just unsuccessful repair on that boot. So you're going to see a funny looking boot with bag over it. Basically what I had to do was kind of reassemble everything and just tape a bag over the old boot, and just to keep all the grease and everything in there when I put everything back together, just enough so I could navigate the car around and make some room in the garage. But again, here we are. This is day 2, and we're going to be doing a replacement on front driver's side CV axle. Hey there randos, Random Dave back. It's another video for car repair. We're going to be working on a front CV axle boot. I know a lot of folks just say change out the whole axle, but I'm not really getting any clicking or weird noises or anything like that with the CV axle. So I'm just going to try swapping out the boot. Never did it before, and it looks like it'll be an interesting challenge. So we will get the car up and get the wheel off and get down to removing that CV boot. Here's what we got ordered from Toyota. Hopefully you get a view on that. We got front boot kit, front drive shaft inner and outer, part number 04428-06330, Toyota, made in USA. A couple of grease packs in there. I actually bought 2 kits, and I'm really only going to do the outer boot. So here we are under the car. Got the left side, driver's side, front boot, and you can see it is torn at the narrow end of the cone where it attaches to the shaft. There's some grease that's kind of slung out of it. The other boot is good. I'll show that a little bit later along in the repair. But what we got to do is get the wheel off and then get the shaft out of the knuckle, I guess you call that. So I'm going to try to do this by removing the bolts for this strut assembly, and maybe just loosen this area up enough that I can swing the wheel, the knuckle out of the way, and deliver this baby and get a new boot on there. So I'm just removing this bracket here holding the speed sensor, wheel speed sensor, and the brake line tubing. So get that out of the way. And now we have to remove the brake caliper assembly. So we're going to take that off and hang it, get that out of the way. And we got the caliper out of the way, 17 millimeters. Just hanging that up there. These are 17 millimeter bolts. Just used my handy dandy extendo ratchet and just gave her the beans. And yeah, just spun that off and hang it aside, and now we'll get down to it. We have the rotor off, and now we're going to remove this nut here. It's 12 point, let's see, 27, nope, 30 millimeter, 12 point. Before I forget, there's a little notch. See if we can view that. This gets kind of punched down in there to help lock it in. You got to raise that notch up, the little punch or something like that, and just get it up enough. Some people, I think, just muscle it off with their impact, but you can maybe get something underneath there and lift that little area where it's kind of compressed down, and then spin it off with your impact. And so now we loosened up these nuts, connecting the knuckle to the strut there, and that was a 22 millimeter on these rascals. So we'll get that separated and see if we can't push this axle out through the back and have access to this boot and go from there. I have it out through the back. What I did was I put the jack underneath just to support the bottom end here where the ball joint is, and then kind of strung this up to hold it. It's kind of heavy and I don't want it to just twist down and hang down. It might damage any other joints in there. So now we got to remove the clamps and the boot and get those out of there. So it'll require some side cutters and probably a Stanley knife, you know, utility knife, cut that thing off. So let's get on it. So I didn't quite have the strength to cut through the strap here. I was trying to cut this part and it's very thick, and my side cutters they don't have enough leverage on them. So what I did was I drove a screwdriver through the opening there and could get enough spread on it, and then I could just work the screwdriver underneath and release it from the little catch tab there, and it got it to pop off. So that's one way to do it. Just drive it through there, increase the gap, and then work your screwdriver under there and try and pop it off. So I'll probably have to do that for the back one, or the smaller diameter one. Yeah, it was the same deal, same design. Clip, get a little gap in there, make some space, and then you can kind of pry it off and tab there and release it. So I put a little towel there just to protect the ring for the speed sensor. And now we're going to get in there with the blade and cut through the boot and get that out of there. So the boot is removed. Now the fun part is if I can knock this off without actually removing the whole axle. I know that sounds pretty not smart, not efficient, but we'll see. I'll give it a go. It's kind of trying it a different way here. Sometimes different is better, sometimes it's worse, and sometimes you just got to follow the common wisdom. So a quick update here. There's just no way with all the play that's in that axle I'm gonna be able to hammer off that end. So I'm gonna have to remove the whole axle. So I'm gonna get under there with a pry bar and hopefully pop it out. Certainly, I guess I expected this. Well, I freed the shaft from the transmission, and I had to use a pry bar, put my foot on it, and then grasp the inboard joint and give it a yank. I got a catch can underneath there for the trans fluid that's leaking out right now, a little can. So we'll get to do a little fill on the trans fluid. Luckily I have some. Alright, so what I did was I used the bungee cord and wrapped it around to hold the shaft somewhat horizontal as I did this, and just kind of got my foot underneath there and pushed on the pry bar as I was holding the inboard side, and it freed up. So now I gotta check, make sure the ring is good and all that stuff. So the fun continues. I knew this would be the hard part. So for hard part, part 2, we got to get the actual joint off, and I just wrapped the other end in a sock, and we're gonna drift that thing out of there. So I don't think I want to show this on camera, but it's going to involve a hammer and kind of a punch, and we're just going to whack that thing off. Wish me luck. Okay, we're gonna take the wheel off now and get the brakes and the rotor out of there and start disassembly. I have this disassembly, all these steps in the other footage. I'll just splice it in. Well, there she is in all her glory. That's the original shaft, and you can see I wrapped everything in plastic and tape just to hold the grease and everything in there. The truth of the matter, no matter what I tried, I could not get this joint off of here. It was really beyond the tools and everything that I had. Don't have a slide hammer. I don't even have a vise, bench vise. Just tried to whack it off, drift it off with a hammer and a punch, or a drift, whatever you want to call it, and did not work. So I had to slap everything back together and throw it on the car just so I could move it around a bit. So now we're going to use a replacement part. Here we have our replacement part from AutoZone, 10918N CV axle, Duralast gold. Cost about $100 with tax out here in the West. Let's get a look-see. So there we have. Comes with an axle nut. Sure is stubby looking. Let's get the original and compare them. So here we have them both together. You can see quite a bit of difference. I wonder if this is like an anti-vibration coupling, something like that. It also looks like the front end of it, the outboard side, is not as robust looking as the Toyota one, the depth of it. But they pretty much measure up to length pretty equally there, so we're going to give it a go. At this point, we don't have too many options, and can't really wait for Toyota to deliver one at this time. So now we're getting everything lined up. I got my bungee cord over here holding the shaft into place like an extra hand, and I'm just going to clean out any transmission fluid that kind of leaked on the outer part of that seal in there. And then I've read and heard that you have to, there's a little circlip on the end portion here, and I've read that you have to make sure that that circlip is upside down, or the opening facing down, to get it to pop in right. So that's what I'm going to do. This clip is a little bigger, it's not been compressed, so this will probably be a little more of a challenge to get it to seat home. But it should do the trick, should pop into place, and then we'll give it a little tug to make sure that it is indeed found its home. So stay tuned. Well, that wasn't too bad. I just put the axle nut on the back end and used just a little dead blow mallet. Made sure I kind of compressed everything and gave it a few whacks to line it up, and then gave it a couple of pushes on there and just seated it. Alright, so we have it in, and I lined up in the knuckle here, so it just takes a little finagling and wiggling, and you can pop it in there, and everything seems to turn okay. So I think we're good to start kind of piecing everything back together. At first it felt like it was frozen in there, but I just needed to kind of give it a quick turn and everything's locked into place. I gave it, you know, gave it a tug back here, and you know, it's all seated in there. It looks like the snap ring went in just fine, and everything looks pretty well lined up, so time to reverse disassemble. And we got everything, well, not everything. We got the knuckle attached back to the strut. Most people recommend, if you mess around in here, you probably should get an alignment, and since I replaced the axle, I will be doing that. I'll be getting an alignment. So yeah, we'll just put the rotor back on and start putting it back together, finishing the reassembly here. So we got it all put back together, except for the tire. So what I need to do is get the tire on and then torque everything down. Everything else is torqued to spec. So I think this one is like 200 foot-pounds, something like that. And then tap in that little corner there just to lock it into that groove. And then that should be it and ready for a test drive. Okay, so we got it all buttoned up, and the last thing to do is to warm it up and check trans fluid, because we did lose some when we pulled the axle out. And then we get that all sorted out, and then we'll take it for a ride, see how it goes. I have to say that this CV joint did not feel as well lubricated as the previous one. Probably just because it's new, I'm hoping, and it needs to work itself in a bit. I hope they didn't give me a dry one under that boot. Hope they packed it up with oil. I checked the manual on it, and it did say they have an optimal amount of lubrication in the joint. So maybe it just needs a little breaking in period driving around, and yeah, we'll see how long it lasts. So this is Random Dave signing out. If there is anything that comes up, I will add it to the video. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe.